Hi, so we're going to look at micro lesson number 7 and 8, which is teaching of a new asana. And these micro lessons are pretty exciting because it is fun to teach a new pose. For micro lesson number 7, you're going to teach a pose from sitting or standing, and it will be one that you've already covered in the class. And for micro lesson number 8, you'll teach one from supine or prone position. So there are a few important points that you want to make sure are covered. So you don't have to say it exactly in this way, but the way that you explain about the position and the way that you take the practice of the asana should indicate that you're covering these points. So the asana should be steady and comfortable. The movements are necessary to obtain the pose. Of course, these movements should be slow, controlled, and ideally correlated with the breath. And we can explain all of this by the way that we teach the position. Now, looking at actually how to teach the pose. So first you're going to give an introduction with an explanation about the name. So if you know the Sanskrit name, then definitely use it. And you can also say the English name as well. And if the name correlates to the position, so for example, Dhanurasan, Dhanu is bow. So you might explain about how we're going to be making the shape of a bow. And the introduction with the explanation of the name and the brief explanation of the stages and position can kind of link together. Basically, your introduction is there to create interest in your students. So they get excited about learning this new pose. So here you can see that second point of brief explanation of the stages. Here you really want to be brief. You don't want to go into detail about every little movement to do the position. You just want to say it overall, just to give an idea about how it's going to be. And then you're going to give benefits of the asana. Now, I like to give a few benefits in the introduction about the pose, and then I like to show it and start talking about the benefits, because I find that if you give a demonstration and you can talk on the benefits during the demonstration, which of course will depend on the pose, but it helps them link the benefits to the position. So they start to understand why the pose is helpful for certain things. What you can also do is give some benefits in between doing the two demonstrations, and you can give some benefits afterwards as well. How many benefits will depend on the position. You've also got to think about how long you want to be teaching the pose for. Now, if I teach Savrangasana shoulder stand, now there's a lot of benefits, and I could talk about the benefits for a long time. I could teach the pose for 20 minutes, but no one wants to hear about this for 20 minutes. So we have to talk on all the important points and then get the students to practice. So for example, this micro lesson generally will take between 5 to 8 minutes. For certain poses, they will take a little bit on the longer side, so more towards the 7 or 8 minutes, and some which are a little bit simpler, they won't take as long. So things like the shoulder stand, Sarangasana, Viparit Kani, Ardha Matsundrasana, those are going to take a little bit longer. And some of the simpler positions, or ones that don't need as many movements to come into, they generally won't need as much discussion. So that just gives you a little idea of how much to talk. Now you also want to talk about the timing. So for example, if I'm going to teach Savangasana the shoulder stand, if I give all these benefits and they think that they can just hold it for 30 seconds and they'll get all that benefit, well, it doesn't work like that. So we need to tell them the time that we want to aim for over a period of time. Okay, they shouldn't be getting put off about it, but it's still helpful to give that timing, especially for certain poses where it is better to hold it for longer. Now, looking at the demonstration. So you want to give a demonstration, 2 times demonstration, and you can show the demonstration from 2 different angles. You may be able to talk while you're demonstrating, or it might be difficult to talk. It depends on the position, and you also need to take care of your safety. For example, if you're going to teach Savrangasana shoulder stand, now you don't want to be in that position and then turn your head to talk to students, because that can injure your neck, and it's not very good for the students to see that. So sometimes you might have to do the demonstration, come out of it or partially come out of it, and then talk. So here you can see in the first demonstration there should be a focus on the breath, then explanation of the stages and the final position. And then in the second demonstration you can focus more on the modifications or the variations and the do's and don'ts. So the demonstration is going to be very helpful, and as I mentioned, making it from a different angle so that everybody can see in the class. Then you're going to explain the precautions. So we always explain the precautions just before taking practice so that the precautions will be fresh in the students' minds. Then to give instructions, we're going to talk about the movements needed to come into the pose, and along with any kind of breathing instructions. Once they're in the position, of course, you're going to make any corrections that are necessary. Again, you want to talk about relaxation, you want to talk about the breath and breathing normally, and you can talk a little bit more about the position if there is time, and then you're going to give instructions to release the pose. So remember that they're not going to hold it for very long because it's a new pose. It's the first time they've done it, but it is very helpful to get them to practice a second time. But if it is a position where they're already doing it 2 times, so for example, if it's say Trikonasana triangle or Virasana warrior, then you don't need to again repeat it. But for a pose such as say cobra position or locust, Shalabhasana locust, or Dhanurasana bow, or Paschimottanasana full forward bend, you can do a second round. So this is a little bit about the micro lesson, and we're going to be moving on to the checklist. So looking at the checklist, first you want to make sure that you have a nice introduction with an explanation of the Sanskrit name, the English name, why it's called that. You may talk briefly about the position as well, how you're coming into it and how the pose looks like, but it's going to be brief. So remembering that this is to create interest in your students. Then you want to make sure that you're going to cover the benefits of the asana, and how many of those benefits will depend on how much time you have. But you do want to make sure that you're covering at least 4 or 5 benefits, if not more, depending on the pose. And you can talk about the benefits starting in the introduction, then you might go into more benefits. You can talk about it during the demonstration or in between the 2 demonstrations, and also afterwards. After all your benefits and the demonstration, which you're going to do from 2 angles, remembering that you want to include do's and don'ts and any kind of modifications and variations, then you're going to do precautions. So just before they practice. Then you're going to give instructions for practice. So in those instructions, you're going to talk about the movements needed to achieve the position with the use of the breath. And once they're in the position, getting them to breathe normally, allowing the body to relax. And if there's time, you can talk a little bit more about the position, the areas that are stressed, what to focus on, and any kind of corrections. And then you're going to allow them to release the position, again using the breath. Remembering also that you can talk about the alignment of the pose. So this can be where you're explaining how the position should be. And you want to make sure that your voice is going to be nice and peaceful and relaxed. And also looking at your body language and how you're interacting with students. So this is your checklist for micro lessons 7 and 8, and now we'll see a short demonstration or example of the micro lesson of teaching a new asana. Hariom. Hariom. So today we're going to be learning a new asana, And the asana we're going to learn is Dhanurasana. Dhanu means bow. So basically what we're doing in the prone position, we're going to be bending our knees, holding our ankles and pulling our body up into the shape of a bow. Now this is a really nice back bend which has an opening effect on the chest, and all of the body weight is being put onto the belly. So we'll see a demonstration and then I'll talk more about it. So from the prone position. So in our prone position, we've got our feet together, our chin is down and our palms facing down. From this position, we're going to bring our feet apart, about hip width distance. Bend our knees, bringing our feet and our heels towards our bottom. From here, grabbing hold of your ankles from the outside. At this point, you can try to pull your shoulder blades a little bit towards each other in preparation. Bring your forehead to the ground. Exhale. And while inhaling, slowly raising your head, neck and chest up. And then also your thighs. Looking forward or looking upwards. Try to pull the shoulder blades towards each other. Try to use your feet to stretch upwards. And make sure that you're also lifting your thighs. We want to try to have the shoulders and the knees in alignment. We don't want to be just lifting up the chest. Now to release the position, inhale, exhale slowly, lowering your thighs, your chest and your forehead. And then slowly, breathing normally, you can release your hands and lowering your legs down and your feet together. So we'll see it from another angle. Now for some people this position can be a little bit hard, so we can also have variations of this pose so that eventually they can get into the full pose. So from our prone position, we make sure that we have our feet apart, okay? Then we bend our knees, holding onto our feet. Now sometimes people like to hold it from the other way, but generally that's not very comfortable for most people. So from the outside is the best option. Remember to try to open your chest, have your shoulder blades towards each other. Forehead down, exhale, and inhaling, slowly raising the body up. So here, you're trying to put the weight onto your belly. As I said, we're aiming to lift the thighs as well. If you're very new to it, you can come down a little further. And if it's still very difficult, you can just have the thighs on the ground. But eventually you want to aim to be able to lift the thighs as well. Okay? You want to make sure you're looking forward and your chest is open. You don't want to be like this, hunching the back. Okay? And you can see by this nice opening of the chest, it's very helpful for the posture. So to release the position, inhale, exhale, releasing, lowering the thighs, lowering the chest, forehead. Breathing normally, releasing your ankles, lowering your feet. Chin on the mat. Okay. So this is our position, and Dhanurasana, as I've explained, is a nice back bend. It's very good for toning the nerves of the spine. It's very helpful for strengthening the spine. It's very helpful for improving the posture, so especially because it helps to open the chest. So those people who have a tendency to hunch in, it can help with that opening. It's also very helpful for increasing the expansion of the lungs. So it can help with breathing. It can help with people who have a tendency towards asthma, towards bronchitis. Then you also would have seen that the weight is being put onto the belly. Now, it is normal and natural to have a slight movement because that weight is being put on the belly, but we're trying to minimize that movement as much as possible. And all that weight being put onto the belly means that there's a lot more pressure being put into the abdominal organs. It's very helpful for improving circulation to the reproductive system, the intestines, small intestines, large intestines, to the liver. It's helpful for the pancreas. In fact, it's one of the best positions for those with diabetes. And it's very helpful for any kind of sluggishness that is there with the digestive system. If a person is having issues of malabsorption, like they're not able to get enough of the nutrients, then this position is a very helpful one to do. So it's a great position. There are a few things that we do need to take care of because it is a little bit of a stronger back bend. Someone who is having any lower back pain should avoid this asana until they've recovered. And there's lots of other back bends that they can be doing instead. Also, anyone who has had any kind of abdominal surgery, because we're putting a lot of weight onto the belly. So it's important that they haven't had any abdominal surgery in the last 6 months. Also, taking care for anyone who has very high blood pressure, because this position can be a little bit strenuous. And also remembering that any woman who is pregnant, they can't do this position because there's a lot of pressure being put just where the baby would be growing. And it's also not recommended to practice this in the first few days of menstruation, just because there can be quite a bit of cramping going on at that time. And if again we're putting all that pressure into that area, it can be quite uncomfortable. So there's lots of other positions which would be more suitable during the time of menstruation. The other thing to be aware of is the knees. So for some people it can be too strong a pressure being put onto the knees, and if that's the case, they can do the half version of Dhanurasana, Ardha Dhanurasana, the half bow pose. Otherwise they can do other practices which will strengthen the knees more. So this is a little bit about the precautions, and now we're going to take practice of the pose. Okay, so now we're going to practice Dhanurasana, the bow pose. So coming into prone position, where your feet are together, your chin is on the mat, and your arms down by the side, palms facing down. Now from here, we're going to bend our knees. Bend the knees, Ishi. Taking a bit of distance between your knees. You want to have distance between your knees. You don't want to keep the knees together because it's too strong in the lower back. Holding onto your ankles. Okay, from here, bring the forehead onto the ground. Exhale, try to pull your shoulders back and inhaling up. Keep the feet a little bit apart. Breathing normally. Now inhale and exhale, slowly releasing, lowering the legs, chest and forehead to the ground, chin on the mat. Okay, we're going to do one more round. What's important when you're practicing here is that you're trying to lift up not only your chest but also your thighs, and trying to minimize the movement on the belly as well. So one more time we'll try. So from here, bending the knees, bring the feet towards your bottom, separate the knees. Okay, now holding onto the feet, the ankles, forehead down, exhale and inhale, slowly lifting up the body, breathing normally, trying to hold the position. So trying to bring your feet upwards, a little bit of distance, that's right, Ishi, between the knees, normal breathing. Now inhale and exhale, slowly release, thighs down, lowering the chest, releasing the ankles, hands on the ground and chin on the mat. And we've completed Dhanurasana,